Hello Internet, I'm Jackie Fox, and today we're going to talk about how many states in the United States still constitutionally allow slavery. And I've talked about this in a previous video on this channel, but it wasn't really the subject of that. It was, I believe, or I think at least the thumbnail said, I know why the poor white votes. But it was mainly a look at how racism has been used as a wedge and was kind of invented as a political wedge, and how that tracks into modern day politics. And one of the things that I followed in there was the 13th Amendment, which, while it did ban slavery in general, it did specifically provide an exception for involuntary servitude for someone who has been convicted of a crime. Now, in the modern day, my understanding is that there's about 20 states that have had language like this in their state constitution that also allows for slavery through involuntary servitude for someone who's been convicted of a crime. Now, just as an update, since I made that video, Colorado actually passed legislation to remove that language from their constitution in 2018. And then in 2020, Nebraska and Utah also followed suit. But the reason I'm mentioning this now is because most recently this has made the news as Tennessee has finally banned slavery. But that's not even like the big part. It's just the catchy one. It's the one that people pay attention to because it's in the South, and being from their neighboring state, I get it. I think North Carolina might be one of those 20 states that still has this wording in the Constitution. I'm not sure. And it is something that, seeing this success, I would actually like to find out and push for a change locally. Because, this seems like kind of a popular wave. Maybe we can be one of the 5 or 6 states that does it in 2024. But in 2022... in the midterm that we have heard so much about already, a number of states, not just Tennessee, passed this. It was also Alabama and Vermont as well. The vote is a little too close to call, but possibly Oregon as well, which is odd, thinking of these as being too close to call. But a big one is that Louisiana rejected a ballot measure, became the first state, I believe, to reject this ballot initiative since it started in 2018. As I focused on in my video when I was talking about the ICE detention center that was performing hysterectomies against people's consent, without people's consent, I also noted that the same kind of prison networks that were operating in that area were headquartered in Louisiana. And there's actually a number of correctional facilities that have very large monetary ties to Louisiana. And this is something that we don't really hear about, like Louisiana being kind of the heart of the prison industrial complex. But I think it is especially interesting when you look at this movement. I mean, we're talking about, at this point, 6 to 7 states out of 8 in the last 4 years have voted on this, and Louisiana is the only one that has clearly rejected this. And just because there's some lack of nuance, I think, in the way that people are discussing this. It's not... They're banning the last form of slavery, and that it is worth looking at specifically what that is, and that is involuntary servitude, unpaid labor that can be coerced out of those who are imprisoned. And for a state whose economy runs very much on prisons, this is a kind of an economic hit to that state in a way. It is essentially, and I'm not saying this is a good argument, essentially it's the same argument that the South made. That like, hey, slavery is kind of important in our economy, so for economic reasons, we should give up on moral ones. I think that's the wrong way to go. I think that maybe in another 2 years, given another chance, Louisiana should definitely change their minds on this. And, if there are Louisiana voters, I'm sure there's plenty, that are upset with this decision, upset with the shame that comes from being the one state in America that's like, no, we like slavery, actually. We prefer it. Maybe you will change your ways. I don't know. But the point is that there are still probably 10 or 12 states left in America in which this form of slavery is legal through their constitution, which has not been amended yet. And we are in the midst of a wave of this. 4 years ago, we had one state vote for this. 2 years ago, we had 2 more states vote for this. In this midterm, we had a total of 5 states vote on these measures. If we keep rising like that, if it keeps doubling and escalating, maybe we'll have 10 states in 2024 that are voting on removing their slavery exceptions. And then that puts us within real, actual spitting distance of finally, fully, and completely banning slavery in the United States before 2030. I think we can do this before 2030. But I think that it also requires that people, A, look into their own state constitutions, and B, actually become engaged in pushing for these ballot measures to be proposed in the next election. Because if anything, the track record here with 6 to 7 out of 8 states approving these measures, the track record for getting this passed is pretty freaking good. So if ever there was a time to actually make a push to finally finish what was started over a century ago with the 13th Amendment and finally finish banning slavery in the United States, now is the time. Thank you for listening. As always, there are links in the description where you can donate to this channel. I also finally got finished putting out the second edition of one of my favorite books that I've ever written. It was based on a tabletop RPG campaign, so it was kind of collaboratively written, and it was just kind of an interesting way to see if, as the DM, I'm trying to play with kind of the mechanics of being a murder hobo versus being a scholar, and what really helps you make the world a better place, killing everyone in sight, or actually trying to learn the world around you and how to interface with it and shift it into a better direction. So if you think that's interesting, the link to that book will be in the description. You can purchase that, unfortunately, through Amazon. But I am, now that I have the second edition of this out and properly edited, I am looking to get it onto an actual publisher that's not owned by Jeffrey Bezos. So, yeah, wish me luck with that. If you know any good publishers, by the way, if anybody out there happens to have some expertise in this area, advice to give, I would greatly appreciate it. But in the meantime, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I hope that after hearing this video, you can imagine a United States in which there is, without exception, no form of slavery allowed whatsoever for any reason. Because that is a future worth looking forward to.